Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Regular viewers of our program know that on the fourth Wednesday of every month, we feature our Bird Notes program. For the past 15 years, we've been fortunate to draw on the knowledge of Audubon, Vermont's wildlife biologist Mark Labar. But the history of Bird Notes on Across the Fence dates back to the 1950s. As we celebrate our 60th anniversary, we've looked back through our archive, and one of the things we found was an extended interview with Fran Howe. Fran was the originator of Bird Notes. In fact, she was known to many simply as the Bird Lady. Fran Howe passed away in 1993, but for today's Flashback Friday, we want to share Fran's passion for and knowledge of birds. From our 60th anniversary archive, here's a special edition of Bird Notes.
Well, it was the most natural thing in the world, I'm sure. My mother was a birder, and her father was a birder. And my mother says that when I was 2.5, I used to take my grandfather's hand and say, "See meadowlark," whereupon he would take me over to the golf course, which was on part of his land, and we would look for meadowlarks. I don't remember, of course, but I can remember always being interested in the birds that I saw, identifying as many of them as I could, and remembering where I saw them. I don't remember that I found many birds' nests, but I found many birds, different kinds of birds. And I can remember an uncle of mine sticking his arm in up to his shoulder, in a hole in the bank, in order to bring out a baby bank swallow for me to see. And I was, I guess 5 years old at that time. I think that we are going to find that our dwindling bird population in the winter is directly related to the loss of habitat. All the things that you read about birds and bird studies indicate that birds go when their habitat goes. And this is one of the things, of course, that we're very concerned about with the loss of the rainforests. And how many birds are we losing? Birds that may not have even been identified, that will be lost and gone forever. I think as we understand more of the life habits of birds, we can perhaps help them stay, perhaps even encourage some to come in which are not here now. But I think they are one of the indicators of what is happening to us. The pressure of population, the loss of the farm areas that have always been here since the founding of Vermont, the possibly, and this we don't know about for sure, but air pollution may have an effect on this. They're an indication of whether our environment is improving or being abused and becoming lost in many ways. My husband and I were charter members of the Green Mountain Audubon Society. I was very active in the establishment of the Nature Center in Huntington. And for several years, I did a great many interpretive walks with groups of school children on the property. And one of the most interesting things I did over there was work on teachers' workshops in the summertime, when Ethel Shuley and Emily Bell and I taught nature, I guess I would say nature understanding or observance of the things that are natural around us. Or occurring naturally would be a better way of putting it. And we had teachers, and they came for 5 days, 2 weeks in a row. And we had, we were there from 9 in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we went on the trails on the Nature Center, and we did a great deal of talking and studying about the different birds and flowers and trees and things that were at the Nature Center. The trees contribute so much to our atmosphere. They hold our soil in place. They furnish homes for birds. They furnish food. But by and large, they make our world a better place to live in. And this is one of the things we think about, as in underdeveloped countries, they are cutting off their rainforests because they are an irreplaceable loss. And never in our lifetime will these old-growth forests return. I think of people who raise baby birds or people who take in and care for injured birds as people with very special skills, which I do not consider that I have. I think perhaps the most amazing thing was what I saw, I think it was last fall, possibly the year before. Time goes so fast that I can't always tell whether it was a year ago or 2 years ago or even 5 years ago. But anyway, this young lady who works at the Trapp Family Coffee Shop in Stowe had raised a baby barn swallow. And he was just an adorable bird. She had gotten him before he had any feathers at all. And she had taken care of him, and this means food every 20 minutes with a baby bird from sun up to sundown. And that is beyond my capability. But she had done it, and she had this beautiful bird, and that bird sat on my hand, and I rubbed his tummy with my finger. It is so soft, these beautiful new feathers. Feathers are one of the most amazing things in the world. And this bird was fine, and the day after I saw him, he took off with other barn swallows and really became a barn swallow and not a pet, which of course is what you should be hoping for if you're trying to do this with a bird, trying to get him back into the wild. And this is the thing that they have been trying to do with the peregrine falcon. And they have succeeded very well. And one of the things they have striven, is that a good word, striven particularly for, is to prevent that bird becoming attached to humans, which many times is when we lose these birds we're trying to save, because if they lose their sense of wildness, they are handicapped. Well, the bluebirds are just as exciting as the turkeys are, the wild turkeys. We almost lost the bluebirds, and it was the dedication of individual people and of the Audubon Society on a state level that have returned the bluebirds to a viable flock of birds in the state of Vermont. And of course they are so very beautiful. I can remember going to the islands with my husband one day, and we turned around and went back by a certain spot in the road 3 different times, one right after the other, because there was a gorgeous male bluebird sitting on the fence, and we wanted to see it. I can remember my disappointment with a group of very young children at the Nature Center when there was a bluebird on the telephone wire, and I couldn't stir up any enthusiasm among them as to what that bird was or why it was important that they see it. If they'd been a little bit older, they were very young, they were first and second graders. I think if they'd been a little bit older, maybe I could have stirred up some real interest. But there are certain people who stand out among the people who have helped the bluebird get back in Vermont. And I think we would probably put Ted and Olympia LeBeau of Springfield, Vermont at the top of that list, at least I would, the top of my personal list. They have not only encouraged bluebirds in any way they could think of, but they have offered at cost a bluebird house, which is very, very helpful in a program to bring back a bird whose species are diminishing. Bluebirds are hole nesters, cavity nesters we call them, as the woodpeckers are, as the chickadee is. And some of these birds have fared very well with the demise of the Dutch elm disease because the dead trees have helped them make holes. They could make holes in a rotted tree limb. And in the olden days, as we like to say, they would nest in the apple trees, in the orchards that went on being an orchard for years and years and years, for family generations, and not the neat, very well taken care of, very frequently replaced trees that we have in orchards today. People were interested in those days in providing apples for family use. They weren't thinking about apples, as a cash crop. But the bluebirds would nest in the apple trees. Well, when the apple trees of the old orchards disappeared, what was the bluebird going to do? They also went to fence posts, and there aren't very many holes that would do for nesting in a woven wire fence. And yet we have more woven wire fences than we have rail fences or wooden fences. And so the bluebird was kind of out of luck. It was a disappearance of a habitat. And these beautiful bluebird houses that the LeBeaus and other people have made have answered the need. The bluebirds go into the houses and set up the housekeeping, and as all birds seem to do when they are pushed toward a dangerous level, they have more than one brood a summer, sometimes as many as 3 broods. It seems as if they sense that their population is nearing a danger point, and they must do something about it. And so they have 2 or 3 broods in the birdhouses, and the people become so possessive of them. They talk about my bluebirds and your bluebirds and our bluebirds. And people who have bluebirds have that sweet song, the beautiful color of the bluebirds flying around. They also are very helpful to gardeners because they are an insect-eating bird. And they used to come down into the gardens and pick up the cutworms and various insects that were troublesome, and they're beginning to do it again. We're very happy about that. Wetlands are the spawning ground for fish, in many cases. They are a moisture-holding area which helps all of the land around them. They bring in some of our most dramatic, I guess that's a good word, our most dramatic birds. The great blue heron comes to wetlands. One of the last trips that we were able to take as a family of 4 was by a marsh, and we saw a bittern. A bittern is a very strange bird, but a very interesting one. And we saw the bittern. The bittern has a very strange habit of standing with his bill pointing straight up in the air and sidling up to rushes, and he has quite protective feathers that make it almost impossible to see him. And I always think that he is standing there still as a weed or a reed and saying, "You can't see me, can you? You don't know I'm here, do you?" And that, of course, is what he hopes, but you usually do see him. And I always think he's a very humorous bird. I love to see a bittern. Seagulls, we speak of them. Actually, we have several different species of seagulls on the lake. And they are scavengers. They do a great deal to keep the edges of our lake attractive by cleaning up various and sundry dead fish and objects that come in on the lake shore and make it less attractive. We need the seagulls. We need them badly. Probably our most common one, or the last I knew our more common one, was the ring-billed gull. Well, I would say to the children of Vermont that birds are really necessary to people. They are an element of beauty in our lives, and we certainly need beauty. We used to think that that was something that was nice but not necessary. More and more we realize that that is necessary. They are an element of beauty. If you hear a thrush song at evening, you have heard some of the most beautiful melody you will ever hear in all your lives anywhere, anywhere. We can't make a butterfly. We can't make a moth. We can't make a bird. But they're all here. They're beautiful things for us to see and enjoy and treasure and cherish. And I hope I have helped a few people to get that idea that this is something that they can and will remember and cherish.